So today on our Summer of 50 Pittsburgh Tech Stories, we're talking to Kevin Miller from LegalSifter, super cool company here in Pittsburgh that I cannot wait to learn more about, because what they do, it kind of blows my mind a little bit. Like being able to take all this legal work and be able to put that to where it's like they can easily generate contracts and things like that. I think it is amazing stuff, and we've watched them grow over the years. And before I hit the record button on this, Kevin was saying like, yeah, we're still growing despite this pandemic, which makes me feel so good, because I worry about all of our tech companies out there, because I know this pandemic's been crazy on everybody, but I also know that we got the smartest women and men working in our industry, and they find crazy cool ways around this stuff. I know Kevin's probably found some ways around it. So Kevin, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. It's good to connect again. I'm glad to hear you're doing well, and welcome to the show.
Jonathan, thank you so much for having us, and I wish all your listeners out there all the safety that we can wish on them as we head into the fall season. And it's been a crazy time, and I'm happy to be here.
Thanks so much. And I said, we can't do this without hanging out with our friends at Comcast here. So we're actually nearing the end of our 50 stories. It's crazy. I think we only got 7 or 8 more to go, but you know what? We're going to keep telling stories after this, because the stories keep coming. I hate to say it, it's been way too easy to tell 50 of these things over the summer. Like it's, I had to get picky and choosy, you know what I mean? And I definitely picked you guys because, like I said, you're doing some amazing stuff. So let's start with like an overview of LegalSifter and what it's all about. And it's really got this cool story as to how it kind of came together, and it just kind of took off.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you about what we do and the problem we solve, and then give you a little bit of the history, if that's okay.
Definitely, man. Sounds good to me.
So we help, we make contracts easier with AI and expertise. Right. And, contracts are the most important document in global commerce. Mm-hmm. And they are universally a pain. If you go and talk to people about contracts and you just
You're being too nice when you say that, Kevin.
Yeah. If you ask somebody, say, have you negotiated a contract recently, and you just shut up, they will tell you a story, and it's usually laborious and ugly. And the problems are universal. They're global, and the biggest problems in the contract life cycle are the ones that we address. And so basically the problems we help people with, and most of our clients are companies or organizations or nonprofits or small businesses or small and local governments, all the way up to Global 500. And then we also service law firms. But the problems that these organizations have, the first problem and the biggest problem they have is in the negotiation cycle. If they're large, they have a process that's usually slowing sales or slowing purchases, which is slowing time to cash or time to cash savings. We work so hard on improving sales efficiency and sales cycles, but we really haven't attacked that contract review process.
Or afterwards, but they got to go through all the paperwork.
That's right. So people are like, can you make that easier? Because it's a pain. I'm either signing something I shouldn't, worried about signing something I shouldn't, or I got too many people involved, and I can't afford to send everything to my attorney. And then after you sign, so that's the before you sign problem. Then after you sign, they can't keep track of the things.
Right, exactly. Because so we all sign the contract, like, we'll file this away, and then a year later you're trying to find.
That's right. That's right. And so what we've done is we built a product called LegalSifter. This was the origin of the company, that reads contracts and gives advice. And the idea is, in the not too distant future, everybody on the planet will not just use grammar check or spell check to review these complex documents, but they're going to use a tool that reads the document or reviews it and gives in context terms and conditions help. And so that's what the tool does.
I love it.
And so that speeds things up for people. It's like a second set of eyes, or it reduces risk. It makes sure you don't sign something you shouldn't.
Right.
And then that was the origin. That's what we plan to do. That's a SaaS product and can be bought at the small business level all the way Global 500. And then by accident, last year we launched a product called Sifter Concierge, because we kept hearing over and over and over again how people can't organize their contracts, despite the fact that there are 200 contract database companies out there selling databases.
Oh, really?
And the issue is the databases are fine. The issue is, it's like companies are buying these physical libraries to house their contracts, these databases, but all the books are on the floor. They can't put them on the shelf. They can't keep them organized. They can't find them. They can't curate them. So we created Sifter Concierge. It's a contract librarian service. When you sign a contract, you send it to us. we will use people and AI to extract the data you need from the contracts, organize them by amendments and parents and all these things, and drop it into a database. If you need a database, we'll provide you one. If you want us to do it on top of your database, that'll be great.
Wow.
So we're solving the two biggest problems that every organization has: the negotiation of these things, because at least one party in every contract negotiation in the world is on another party's paper. So everybody's got a problem.
Right.
And then once you sign them, just organizing the things.
See, that makes me so happy when I hear this, because that's one of the magical things. Like when you have a startup tech company, you go out and you're solving one problem because that was the foundation of the company. But then as you're done selling the product, you're seeing another opportunity in there. And so the idea that now you're like this full service suite now, where you can help make the contracts go through quicker and more accurately, and now you can actually help make sure they stay organized and you can still find them and review them when you need to afterwards. That's awesome.
Well, it speaks to the nature of, I think a startup, and that you have to pivot around for a while until you figure out what problem you really need to solve and whether or not you got enough of a market to sell it to. And it's a credit to our co-founders. I wasn't the original founder of the company. Okay. The company was founded out of Carnegie Mellon, and the co-founders, they played around with a bunch of different options for a while in the first year or two of the business. But one of the things they did is they built a beta or a demo product that read contracts and gave advice. And they launched it way back in 2014 to some software freelance software developers who never take their contracts to attorneys because they can't afford them.
Right.
And the tool, read the document, gave them advice from that point of view, and helped them out. And it was a really smart idea. And when they launched it, just as a trial in August of 14, they got some press, and they got like 4,000 or 5,000 users in a week or two.
Wow.
But they put it on the shelf. The company put it on the shelf. They just weren't ready to take that to market, to fund it, to make it all work. And so they did some project work for the next year plus.
Really?
I came, that's right. So they weren't really selling that product. It wasn't doing much. And they were doing something else. They were extracting data from stacks of contracts. So then I came into the business at the end of 2015. And it took us about 18 months to go from that moment to launching LegalSifter. But it was born of that original idea that said, you know what? Something that reads contracts and gives advice, that's going to help a lot of people. And so, we just kind of went through a bunch of twists and turns and finally launched that product in 17, and it's been gangbusters ever since. So
amazing.
we just keep growing. Last year we grew 4.5 times. This year we were supposed to triple. Right now we're doubling because
you're only doubling during COVID?
Because of COVID.
Jeez.
So we're surviving, and we're making our way. It's not easy, but we're having some success globally.
Absolutely. So back up real fast. So what were you doing before LegalSifter? What got you interested in being the CEO of LegalSifter? I mean, that's kind of a risky thing where it's like, here's this startup with some shelved technology. I'm going to come in here and turn this thing around.
I was really, it was an accident, really. I mean, I never wanted to be in a startup. If you'd asked me before, I never wanted to do this. I said to people, I'm never going to do a startup. I don't want to do it. But I got my start I came to Pittsburgh for a company called Free Markets that went public in 1999, and Pittsburghers know that story. And that had a big impression on my life. We went from 300 to 1,000 people in like a year. It was crazy.
Yep. I remember.
And I interviewed the day before we went public in 99. So it was a big deal. So I came to Pittsburgh, but I'm also a licensed attorney and I have an MBA. And so I know something about this stuff. And so I was there almost 5 or 6 years. And then I went to education management in town, and that thing blew up in a good way. And then I left after it was bought by Goldman Sachs. And then I spent almost 9 years at a great company in town called Industrial Scientific, which was a safety and technology business that grew from like $60 to $200 million in 8.5 years. And then it eventually sold itself to Fortive very successfully a couple of years ago. So I knew that the business, or I suspected the business was going to get sold. And so, I was the chief operating officer of that company, and we had about 1,000 people, and I'd had a great run. That business was owned by the McElhatton family in town. They were very good.
Justin well, absolutely.
Justin was terrific. He was terrific to work for. We were friends to this day, and Justin and I got to the point where it was like, do you want to do a startup inside of that apparatus, or do you want to go find something else? And And we said, I don't know. And so I said, well, I'll maybe start looking for stuff and we'll see what happens over the next 6 months. And one of my first conversations was with Sean Ammirati of Birchmere Ventures and Carnegie Mellon.
Absolutely.
And we had coffee and I had gotten to know him a little bit socially. And
he's
I
like,
said,
we
hey,
need an adult for this business.
And I said, I said, what do you have? And he's like, well, I got this great business, LegalSifter. It has no money, 4 employees. I'm not sure all of them want to stay. We have no product, and but we think it's going to be big.
You're like,
and I was like, Sean, what? But then he kind of mentioned this tool that they had built, and I was like, well, there's some real technology here. And I've been in around machine learning at Industrial Scientific. We had something out of Carnegie Mellon for a while, so I was familiar with the technology, certainly familiar with running SaaS businesses. We had SaaS, service, hardware, and an Internet of Things subscription solution. And so for me, I came back to my wife and I said, robotics and AI is a great city to be in that space. I happen to know a lot about this problem. Are we going to find something better? And they built this thing that actually is pretty promising. And honestly, to be blunt, Jonathan, for about the first 4 weeks, I may have taken the business in a different direction. Thankfully, I didn't.
Okay.
And we stuck to this, and we built this out, and now we got a business, and now we're rolling. So it was just a total accident.
Cool story. No, that's awesome. It's like it's got 4 people. They may not all stay. There's no.
Yeah, it was great. That was great.
Perfect.
Yeah. Count me in.
You came home and told your wife and said it could be worse. I could have bought a boat.
Yeah, I could have bought a boat. Could have bought a motorcycle. Exactly. Sorry to all motorcycles and boat owners. It's fine. I'm not judging you. It's just not for me.
My goodness, that's awesome. So how many people are at LegalSifter now?
Well, we have I think it's 22 full-time employees. We're posting, actually catching me here on August 21st. We're going to be posting 6 jobs. So anybody's listening, we're going to be posting 6 jobs this weekend. We're expanding, and then we have anywhere from, we flex up and down, anywhere from 15 to as many as 30, 35 contractors that we use around the world to supplement our business. So we're looking to change that mix now and bring more of that work in-house into full-time team member roles. We have spiked as high as 75 people because of some workload. But right now, that's kind of where we are. But we're going to be posting 6 of those jobs. Some of them have to be in Pittsburgh. Some can be around. So hopefully some of the folks that are listening will take a look.
That's freaking cool. Those are the types of stories I love being able to tell, that even though all the craziness is going on now, it's like you keep moving ahead because there's still contracts happening. There's still legal
contracts happen every day.
It all has to happen. And you have a solution that actually is going to save people money and time and everything else. So it makes sense that you're still growing like crazy as far as. We
also have a play in consumer. And so our mission is to bring affordable legal services to the world by empowering people with AI. One of the problems with democracy globally is it's more and more unaffordable for people to have access to justice. We have more people that have to represent in the court system themselves, more people that can't afford an attorney in situations that they need them. And it's not really the attorney's fault. They have not had technology that scales them, that does what they do, or even a little bit of what they do. Natural language processing and machine learning, forms of artificial intelligence, things that can react to novel language, is uniquely positioned to allow attorneys to engage that technology in the heart of what they do, the same way engineers or marketing people or accountants or salespeople have been engaged for years. They've had tools, manufacturers in the heart of that workflow for years. Law firms don't have that. Lawyers don't have that. They operate between their ears most of the time, and they have technology on the periphery that helps them with workflow or research or billing, but it doesn't help them do the practice of law. And that's because they have to react to novel language and documents and the like. Right. Well, because NLP and machine learning can react to novel language, you can now create solutions in the heart of that workflow, and that can create more affordable solutions. So by example, we have partnered with a local small law firm here in town, Smory Gigger Law, and we launched about a month or so ago, Clover Contracts. That tool is born, it is LegalSifter. It reads contracts and gives advice for we're targeting right now college students or graduate students who are signing residential leases without the help of an attorney, and they can swipe a credit card, get the tool to read their lease, and get some advice from a lawyer for $69.
Wow!
And that's a great solution. So
that's awesome. That is so cool.
The consumer market for us is going to be long-term huge, and we're looking for partners in the legal field to bring the advice to marry with our AI to get it out in the hands of people, so that people can get to these transactions without having to incur an $800 bill, because they're not going to do it. They're not going to buy that transaction,
Exactly.
but they
Yeah,
need
that becomes a
service.
level you're not going to do it, but for $69, you're going to do it.
Now you're going to do it. And so we think that there's a lot of situations like that. And we want to we're partnering with the legal community to do that. And that's what's really exciting about the future of our business is we want to hit that mission.
Yeah, how has the legal community reacted? Because I'm sure at first it becomes one of these things like, you can't take my job, like, a robot can't do my job. And, I'm sure there's probably some resistance at first, but then as they begin to use it, they realize that's actually freeing me up to do what I do best. And it's not necessarily reading a pretty basic, like residential, like lease contract that, a normal person wouldn't know what's going on. But if you're a lawyer, you're like, whatever. So I'm assuming that there's been this curve to get people cool with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of education that has to go on in general. And I will say this, I will say that with every passing quarter, the acceptance of these types of tools and these types of conversations in the legal community continues to grow. Mm-hmm. There's a movement afoot, and it's slow, but it's moving in the legal community. It's really kind of been picking up speed over the last 2 to 3 years in particular. And, 3 years ago, we would get an inbound right when our product came out, and the inbound would say, "Hey, I hear you can build me a robot lawyer." Now, which is not what we do. And now it's like 3 years later, the inbounds are more sophisticated. They're like, "Hey, I hear you can help me with contracts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And here's my problem." And so what it's not to say that we don't walk into a room, particularly of attorneys, and there isn't fear and doubt.
Right.
And, that still exists, sometimes unreasonably so. And so we have to push up against that and educate and try to get people to say, well, hang on a minute, maybe you were skeptical about Google Maps when you first started using it too, but now you use it all the time. And our point to them is, I don't want to get on a plane where there's not an autopilot. I don't want to get in my car and drive around Pittsburgh with all our 3 rivers without Google Maps. I don't want to buy an attorney that doesn't have, a piece of AI looking over your shoulder, because I know you make mistakes. And it's going to make you a better attorney. By the way, it's going to make you money. And so whatever your incentive is, we can meet that demand. What it's not going to do is replace you. And so I think the replacement conversation, it does happen, particularly in larger organizations that have seen that kind of work in other, seen jobs lost.
Transactional type of work.
That's right.
To get rid of that person.
But I think we do face some of that unnatural fear. In small organizations, we don't tend to find that. It's more, does the tool actually work? Can it really help me? That kind of skepticism, which is a much easier, frankly, problem to solve. That being said, LegalSifter is an early adopter market still. It has moved, but we can see signs of, crossing the chasm and a lot of great activity, because eventually this will become a normal activity for everybody. You're not going to want to review a complex document without the help of a tool.
Exactly.
Like this.
Yeah. It's just like doing TurboTax these days, right?
That's right.
To walk you through the steps, there's AI checking out your tax return.
That's right.
You didn't mess anything up. This is, I'd say, very similar. And only in Pittsburgh will a cool company like this happen, where the company that's kind of on its last legs, and you happen to have an opportunity to do something different, and you meet Sean Emirati, and
it's great.
Happens after that.
It's great.
It's
cool. Great. And we have a lot of companies in Pittsburgh, and still a majority of our users are attorneys, but a growing number of users are in procurement and sales and operations, and particularly small business. You got a lot of small business owners listening to this right now, and they are doing the contract review. This is what we built the tool for, is not attorneys, not just attorneys. And Pittsburgh is a great incubator for a business like this, because we have all these industries represented, and we've proven now over the last year or two that our stuff works for everybody.
Absolutely. Kevin, what an awesome story. I'm so glad you got to tell it. I think it's something that this is something in Pittsburgh we should be like really proud about, because this is what happens here. And I'm glad we got women and men like you here building these types of companies. That's making Pittsburgh pretty kick-ass, man. You're a big part of it. Can't say enough.
Thanks so much. We're thrilled to be here. It's a great place to be for business. The angel community and the investor community has really supported us, and we just couldn't be prouder to be here. Carnegie Mellon in particular, we're origins out of Carnegie Mellon. We have a big connection there. It's just a great place to try to incubate this business. And, we're alive, and COVID hasn't made it easy, but, we're hanging in there, and the fall is going to be better than ever. Our pipeline is huge.
That's what I want to hear, man. So cool. Thanks for being part of our 50 Summer Stories with Comcast. Kevin, wish you guys continued luck as you roll out into the fall and beyond. I know you guys are doing so well, and I'm so happy about that.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I appreciate it.